This is The World Today. Hello and thank you for joining us. I am Peninah, Karibe. The head of Iran's Basij paramilitary unit says the Strait of Hormuz is under Iran's control and management. The remarks come one day after U.S. President Donald Trump's claim that the U.S. has total control of the waterway. A senior Iranian source says Iran and the U.S. remain divided over a permanent end to the war, with no progress to revive the June interim deal. Peace efforts have continued between Iran and Pakistan as they hold talks to discuss the situation in the Middle East. Iran's ambassador to Pakistan, Reza Amiri Moghadam, has met with Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Mohammad Ishaq Dar in Islamabad. Pakistan says dialogue and diplomacy are the only way to resolve issues and achieve lasting peace and stability in the region. Pakistan's Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi has also held high-level talks with his Iranian counterpart and Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in Tehran. Eksan Kibani reports.
State Mohsin Naqvi arrived in Tehran on Tuesday, and he was received by his Iranian counterpart. Naqvi went on to meet Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, and also he sat down with President Pezeshkian later that same day. No specific details have been released about the agenda. The Pakistani Interior Minister just said the visit was meant to follow up on agreements and understandings reached during Iran's Interior Minister's recent trip to Pakistan. But most likely this is also part of Islamabad's broader effort to revive a memorandum of understanding and help pave the way for resuming Iran-U.S. talks. On Wednesday, Naqvi met with Mohsen Rezai, the newly appointed Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. Neither side has shared what was discussed, sticking to general statements about strengthening bilateral ties, but it's hard not to think this trip goes beyond just trade and economics. We should also keep in mind that there were recent reports of a security incident in the Red Sea, as mentioned before, where 3 Pakistani sailors reportedly died and 1 was injured after a vessel came under attack by Yemenis Houthis. Even though Iran always insists that Houthis act independently, it's quite possible that this also came up in the meetings in Tehran. Last week, there was talk of a possible trip by Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi to Islamabad, but nothing was confirmed. And with the Supreme Leader's recent appointments, including new Joint Chief of Staff, a confirmed IRGC Commander-in-Chief, and other key political and security posts, it's worth watching whether we'll see a major shift in Iran's regional and foreign policy. What we're seeing on the ground seems to lean toward more hardline approaches.
Israel and Lebanon have agreed on a list of possible contributors to a proposed mechanism to verify Hezbollah's disarmament. The UK, Italy, Switzerland and Indonesia are considered candidates to send troops to Lebanon. The shortlist follows US brokered negotiations in Rome last week, which aimed to implement a June agreement on Israel's phased withdrawal from Lebanon. A major sticking point is Israel's request to inspect private homes across southern Lebanon, which has been strongly opposed by the Lebanese army. The UK and Switzerland say they're willing to explore ways to support the stabilization process. Reports say the US and Israel are unlikely to involve the UN in the mechanism. Meanwhile, the UN has called for an end to shipping disruptions in the Red Sea, warning they could hinder humanitarian supplies reaching Yemen. The Houthis continue to launch attacks on Saudi targets near the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Ihab Al-Fandi reports from Sana'a.
In a new escalation, Yemen's Ansarullah targeted the military cargo ship Tahama 5 nautical miles off the coast of Makka near the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. The group, also known as Houthis, said the ship was carrying Saudi military equipment. According to preliminary intel from the Yemeni Coast Guard, 6 people were killed and 10 other crew members and military personnel were injured. The UK Maritime Trade Operations Agency and maritime security firm Embry also reported the incident.
The message from targeting the ship is clear. Any Saudi presence or Saudi weapons and any attempt to create chaos in Yemen will not be allowed. These military camps are criminal and target Yemeni sovereignty. What are these forces doing, and why are there such large quantities of weapons?
For the fourth consecutive day, the strikes have extended to targets on the ground. The group's military spokesman Yahya Saree said ballistic missiles and drones were launched at military gatherings and weapons depots in Makha, as well as at the Tatooine military camp in the eastern Marib province. This comes as military operations continue on several fronts across the country.
What
the Sanaa's forces did by carrying out strikes and targeting the forces stationed in Marib and Mokha was aimed at stopping the threat posed by these groups, which had established positions in several locations, prepared themselves and acquired advanced weapons. Therefore, what Sanaa did was aimed at stopping the aggression that these forces were preparing to launch against it.
Politically, the group's chief negotiator Mohammed Abdusalam said the door to dialogue remains open. He accused Saudi Arabia of rejecting negotiations amid the escalation. He added that the group is in contact with regional and international parties and remains committed to conditions it says represent the rights of the Yemeni people. As the confrontation shifts between military operations and political messages, attention turns to whether the current escalation will prompt the parties to assess their positions or further complicate the prospects for reaching a political settlement in Yemen. CGTN, Sanaa.
Colombian President Abelardo de la Espriella says at least 265 people have been killed in the magnitude 7.4 earthquake in the country's western region. Nearly 3,500 people were injured. The president has also declared a state of economic emergency to speed up assistance to those affected. In the city of Cali, an all-out search for survivors is underway. Thousands of volunteers are working around the clock with rescue teams to find those trapped under the rubble. Paula Cabral reports.
Silencio! Arms raised and calls for silence. This is what happens when rescue workers hear signs of life underneath the rubble. And everything stands still. No talking, no walking, no machines. In most cases it lasts for a couple of minutes. And then the frantic work resumes. But sometimes good news. 8 people have been rescued alive in the last 48 hours at La Torre del Limonar, an apartment building which completely collapsed in Monday's earthquake. But some dozens of people who were inside are still unaccounted for. Among them, this woman's niece and the girl's grandparents. The family has been here since the collapse.
Este era el edificio donde ellos vivían.
This was the building where they lived. The girl's grandparent had an apartment here in the same building, and my brother had another. My brother wasn't there at the time. He was spared. The girl was with her maternal grandparents, and they are trapped under the rubble.
What she says has been comforting is the solidarity of fellow Colombians who came as volunteers.
It's amazing to see so many good people giving everything they can, so many committed people even putting their own lives at risk to help us, and to help so many people in this situation.
Countless volunteers have joined efforts across the affected areas, bringing their skills to the rescue, like this nurse from Cali.
United, we will never be defeated. Little by little, grain by grain, we are helping so many people in need. There are many people in there, and the hope of all Colombians is to find them alive. We need to help from the heart. We all have families. Today it's them. Tomorrow it could be us.
There is a 72-hour window after a disaster like this one when protocols say it's more likely to find survivors. This window closes on Thursday morning. However, on the ground, rescue workers say that they are always working in the assumption that there may be somebody alive.
The sergeant leading the operation at this location says they are already entering the recovery phase, searching for the bodies of victims, but still working to find survivors.
Our approach doing this systematically is to make sure that if someone is alive, they haven't been hurt by the operation itself. The idea is always to preserve life and to give that chance to whoever is trapped in the rubble.
Paola's family will keep its watch by the rubble, like many others across the city and this nation, for as long as the searching goes on. Paulo Cabral, CGTN, Cali, Colombia.
Canada's British Columbia is under a state of emergency with out-of-control wildfires forcing over 20,000 residents to evacuate their homes. The Summerland wildfire, the region's most dangerous, has rapidly torn through western Canada, closing highways. More than 600 wildfires have been recorded across Canada, with over 109 in British Columbia alone. Local officials warn that the volatile fires create windy and dry weather conditions, which hinder containment efforts.
It grew immensely. In 2 hours, it turned from a plume of smoke to we need to get out. I'm driving down Garnet Valley, and there is nothing but police and fire trucks and EMTs.
We assume our property is fine, but nothing is for sure, and this event is far from over.
What's your concern, or some uncertainty for you is really concern?
Well, the family.
And that's it for this edition of The World Today. I'll be back shortly with more news from around the continent on Africa Live. I'll see you in a bit. Thanks for watching.
Holding guns. Word protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
Excellency, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Zambia votes in presidential, parliamentary and local government elections. We'll bring you the latest. Zimbabwe boat accident death toll rises to 44. And the World Health Organization chief says the DRC Ebola outbreak is the second largest on record. This is Africa Live. A warm welcome to the program. I am Peninah Karibe. Let's have a look at other stories coming up this hour. In business, oil prices dip as investors assess prospects for weaker global demand this year. And in sports, Malawi and Cameroon stormed the WAFCON finals in Morocco on a night of upsets. Voting is underway in Zambia in general elections, widely expected to give President Hakainde Hichilema a second term, although frustration over the cost of living could dent his support. Hichilema has campaigned on Zambia's economic recovery, including progress on debt restructuring after the country defaulted in 2020. His main challenger is opposition candidate Brian Mundubile, backed by an alliance that includes supporters of the late former president Edgar Lungu. But divisions within the opposition could work in Hichilema's favor. And while inflation has fallen and economic indicators have improved, many Zambians say they have yet to feel the benefits in their daily lives. The election has also raised concerns over political repression and fairness, allegations the government denies. Polling stations are open from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. with results expected next Monday.
We've come to vote. We've been waiting for this day and it has come. So we are exercising our rights to vote and we want to vote peacefully. We pray for Mother Zambia so that we have peace and everything should go according to the way we've planned.
2021, it was so obvious. We knew what we're voting for. Now it's like a 50-50 thing. So, you know, we're just here and there. We're nervous, anxious.
I think I would urge every Zambian out there to please be peaceful and do the right thing. I think there's nothing wrong with doing the right thing.
Lydia Makina is in Lusaka following the voting for us. Lydia, what can you tell us about what is happening where you are?
Oh, the situation is very calm. There's not much violence and people started queuing in the queue, started coming around 03, that's 3 a.m. I came here at 5, which I found even police officers controlling the situation. The queue was very long. We've seen people have turned in numbers. So this is really actually that people really want to vote. And we can see that people are serious with what they are doing, which is very, very good for us, you know. And then we are also seeing that nothing has been nothing has interrupted this election so far. We are talking about the internet, we're talking about peaceful thing, and we're talking about people also following what was being said by the Electoral Commission of Zambia. So the situation currently is very calm. Right now, people have even reduced because in the morning there were a lot of people, but right now they have gone back to do their actual wake. And then we believe that maybe in the afternoon, maybe later again they will come because, I mean, they're closing at 4. So maybe in the afternoon, maybe others will also join in and start casting the vote. But in the morning, it was very, very, a lot of people were here. But right now, the number has reduced because from 6, they started casting their vote.
What are some of the key issues likely to shape today's vote?
I would say the fact that citizen has been the senior citizen have been considered to casting their vote first, because I've just spoken to somebody that is she's in her early 96 years old woman who started voting actually from 1964. Yeah, so she told me to say this is something that she was very happy to do because immediately they saw that, okay, this is an elderly person. They put her on a queue first. So the senior citizens have been considered to cast in their vote. And also we are seeing that it has been, there's nothing like I hold this position. We are seeing leaders coming in, ministers, or let me say former ministers, councillors, and other people that they're coming in. and there's nothing like this person is very special, let her first cast or something like that. Everybody has to queue in, and then this is something that is very, very amazing. We are seeing a lot of things that is happening with the youths as well. They have turned out in numbers. So far, like the constitution I'm in, the youths they've turned up in numbers. So yeah, I would say this is something that is outstanding.
All right, thank you very much for that update. That's Lydia Makina speaking to us from Lusaka. CGTN's Robert Nagela gives us an overview of Zambia's crowded presidential field.
Incumbent President Hakainde Hichilema is seeking a second 5-year term under the ruling United Party for National Development. He's campaigned on the back of a record of economic recovery, free primary and secondary education, along with promises of job creation. He faces 13 other candidates, with opposition candidate Brian Mundubile seen as his main challenger. Mundubile is promising to change how the government operates and improve public services delivery if elected. For voters, the key campaign issues are unemployment, the rising cost of living, and development. Under Zambia's electoral system, a presidential candidate must secure more than 50% of valid votes cast to win outright. If no candidate reaches that threshold, then the top 2 candidates will head to a runoff within 37 days of the initial count. This election also comes after major electoral reforms in December 2025. The reforms increased the number of parliamentary constituencies from 156 to 226, while creating 40 additional parliamentary seats reserved for women, youth, and persons with disabilities. Since gaining independence in 1964, Zambia has largely been known for peaceful elections and orderly transfer of power. The country is now expecting the same, with election results expected on August 17th. Robert Nagela, CGTN.
At least 44 people have died after a passenger ferry capsized on Lake Karibe in Zimbabwe on Tuesday. Police say the vessel, which was designed to carry 90 passengers, may have been carrying more than 120 people when it overturned in heavy winds. So far, 67 people have been rescued and taken to a nearby primary school for medical attention. A memorial service for the victims is taking place today as investigations continue into the cause of the disaster. The World Health Organization chief is warning that the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo is spreading faster than any previous outbreak. The agency says 4,449 confirmed cases and 2,061 deaths have been recorded across 5 provinces and 53 health zones, with most cases and deaths concentrated in Ituri. CGTN's Joy Kirukijuma with the report.
The DRC is facing its fastest growing Ebola outbreak on record. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says it is the second biggest Ebola epidemic on record.
It's moving faster than any previous Ebola outbreak. At its current pace, it's on track to eclipse the West African Ebola outbreak of 2014 to 2016.
The WHO boss made the comments following his trip to the DRC a week ago, where he met President Felix Tshisekedi to address the escalating Ebola epidemic. Ituri remains the epicenter, accounting for about 90% of cases and 80% of deaths, with sustained transmission reported in the towns of Bunia, Rwampara, Nizi and Lita.
Most concerningly, we see a high proportion of deaths in communities instead of treatment units outside of known contact lists. That tells us there are chains of transmission we don't know about. And until we know about and break every chain of transmission, we will not stop the outbreak.
WHO says the scale of the response is now being increased, with contact tracing at about 80%, with a target of 95%. Treatment capacity is also being tripled, with a goal of 3,000 beds within 12 weeks.
Early clinical care and safe and dignified burials are therefore critical for interrupting transmission. And both depend on the trust of affected communities, which means community engagement and community ownership are essential.
Meanwhile, 2 vaccines specifically designed against the rare Bundibujo virus have entered Phase 1 safety trials in humans. WHO says a Phase 3 trial is also being considered, while stressing that the vaccine's effectiveness against the disease in humans is not yet known. Joy Kiruki Juma, CGTN.
Today, in our exclusive continuing coverage of the Ebola outbreak inside the DRC's Mongbalu town, we focus on how limited sanitation resources are hampering efforts to contain the outbreak. As Ituri battles the spread of the deadly virus, many communities continue to face shortages of safe drinking water and basic sanitation facilities, adding another challenge to an already difficult response effort. Woke Sanyabwa tells us more.
Every morning in Mongbalu, residents trek for several kilometers with plastic containers in hand. Their destination is a nearby natural spring where they collect water trickling from makeshift pipes. In this gold mining town, at the heart of the current Ebola outbreak, clean water is scarce, making basic hygiene measures almost impossible for local families. Ebola prevention relies heavily on good hygiene, especially frequent hand washing. But public water taps are far too expensive for most families, while local groundwater sources are often contaminated by runoff from the nearby mines. This is ironic because in this part of the DRC, it rains most days of the year.
3 water jugs cost 1,000 francs. If you have 10 jugs at home and only 1,000 francs left, plus children to feed, what do? That financial pressure is what forces us to walk miles every day to collect free spring water.
According to Oxfam, only 1 in 5 of Mongbalu's 140,000 residents has reliable access to safe water, and every precious drop must be rationed between cooking, drinking and cleaning, leaving little for hand washing.
During this Ebola outbreak, it's important to wash your hands regularly. But if water is hard to find, or if there isn't enough water in the household, it's difficult to protect yourself against this disease.
The crisis extends to public spaces. At Mongbalu's central market, where hundreds gather daily, sanitation facilities are hard to find.
There are no hand-washing stations and no sanitizers here. We go the entire day without washing our hands, unless we did so at home. The authorities need to take action, because the rule right now is to wash your hands.
Some non-governmental organizations have set up water tanks to cushion the population from water scarcity. Groundwater sources provide relief for parts of the community, but the crisis is compounded by the town's main industry, small-scale gold mining, where contaminated water is what is available to thousands of vulnerable workers daily. As residents make do with what little water they can source, public health experts warn that water scarcity is accelerating the health emergency. Wilkisanyabwa, CGTN.
Turning to Sudan, the battle for territory continues between the army and the rapid support forces. On Wednesday, drone attacks targeted 5 cities controlled by the army, including a section of the capital. The RSF has not claimed responsibility for the attacks, but sources say it is stepping up its offensive after recent losses to the army. CGTN's David Mbithe reports.
One of the drone attacks hit this mosque in the city of Bari, which is part of the wider capital area of Khartoum.
We heard the sound of the drone at 6:30 a.m. today. I woke up and saw it because I was sleeping on the roof, the house roof. I thought it was a spraying plane, but afterwards, a short while later, we had a very, very strong hit here at the mosque, which is 150 meters away from us.
This is the first reported drone strike in the capital since May. The UN estimates that more than 4 million people have returned to Khartoum since the army took back control of the nation's seat of power from the RSF in March 2025. The work of rebuilding continues, but returnees face numerous challenges, compounded now by drone attacks.
The power adapter behind me is newly brought to us by the committee responsible for preparing Khartoum for the return of displaced people, because we used to have a major power cut problem. This adapter is new, just 4 or 5 months in. Unfortunately, it was also heavily damaged, according to the electricity company employees.
Further south in the strategic city of Al Obeid in North Kordofan state, witnesses reported at least 8 drones, which triggered army air defenses. 2 people were killed and several injured, according to medical sources. The city has an estimated 500,000 residents, including about 100,000 people previously displaced by the conflict. It has suffered drone attacks and sieges that have decimated its power, fuel, food and water supplies. The RSF retains control of the Darfur region in the country's west, where it has attempted to set up a parallel government, while the army holds most of the eastern half of the country. Gains by the army in recent months include advances in the Kordofan region, southeastern Blue Nile state and West Darfur state. After recent losses in Kordofan, RSF Chief Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo has pledged that his men will double down on attacks and eventually reach the capital. David Mbidi, CGTN.
Naba Muhyiddin is in Khartoum and joins us live for more. Naba, what more can you tell us about the latest drone attacks?
Actually, the drone attacks continue, and this morning we hear the sounds of heavy drone attacks, probably from Bahri City, where I am right now. It's just a few kilometers from here, the same targeted area that hit a mosque yesterday. So drone attacks continue, despite there is no formal statement by the government, or the RSF are not taking responsibility or declaring responsibility of it yet. So drone attacks continue in the capital Khartoum and other 5 cities controlled by the army, and also Al Obeid city, which witnessed a heavy drone attack yesterday. 8 drone attacks that killed at least 2 people and of course paralyzed the movement of people and goods yesterday. So drone attacks continue, and it continued to threat the livelihood of people, continue to threat the returning of people to the capital Khartoum, and of course it targets civilians and civilian infrastructure still.
Now, but let's talk a little bit more about Al Obeid. What is the situation there?
Al Obeid city, Peninah, is still facing mounting threats of seizure, as there is a huge military buildup around the city, according to reports by the United Nations. People also on the ground saying that although that the Sudanese army controlled large parts of North Kordofan state, many cities were captured by the army in the past 3 weeks, but fighting renewed in and around Bahri city, which was controlled by the army, and there is reports, unconfirmed reports, that the fighting is surrounding Al Obeid right now. There is also huge drone attacks targeting Al Obeid city. There is a squadron of drones that were intercepted by air defenses. So people in Al Obeid are worried, and they are, of course, the life is not normal right now. Most of the schools, hospitals, markets, even the civilian facilities are under threat of drone attacks. The number of people who are killed by drone attacks is jumping in Al Obeid and in North Kordofan, which is alarming concerns by international community. We just saw 2 days ago the Bob Leo the 14th called on an immediate ceasefire, alarmed by the suffering of people in Al Obeid, the capital of North Kordofan, and he also called for opening of humanitarian passages. So the situation in Al Obeid is worrying. Drone attacks continue. People are still suffering, and they can't even find ways to escape the city in Al Obeid, which needs an urgent intervention by international community, and of course, first of all, to stop the hostilities against civilians in Al Obeid and in other regions across the country.
Naba, we appreciate that update. Thank you very much. Naba Muhyiddin there in Khartoum. Now let's get to Senegal. Residents and astronomy enthusiasts gathered along Dakar's Western Corniche on Wednesday to watch a partial solar eclipse. The event was organized by the Senegalese Association for the Promotion of Astronomy and the Senegalese Agency for Space Studies. Telescopes, solar projection equipment and special eclipse glasses allowed the public to observe the moon gradually passing across the sun. At its peak, around 36% of the sun was obscured before the eclipse moved towards the horizon. Clouds later affected visibility, but the event still gave residents a rare chance to witness and learn about a major celestial phenomenon. Astronomers say Senegal will have to wait until 2049 for its next total solar eclipse.
What you're seeing now is the solar disk as it is currently visible. When the eclipse starts at 6:20 p.m., we'll see the moon beginning to obscure part of the sun. The moon will continue its path, gradually obscuring more of the sun until it covers almost half of it. 36% of the sun will be obscured by the moon. As the moon continues its journey, it will re-emerge here, and the sun will then reappear in its entirety. So, we use the projection or these special eclipse glasses.
From time to time, this phenomenon reminds people that the universe is something complex, but it's also something governed by fixed laws that allow us to predict and experience these moments. And I think that in Dakar, we are quite lucky to experience this today.
For your information, the next total solar eclipse visible in Senegal will take place in 2049. It will be on Monday, May 1st, 2049. There will be a total solar eclipse. It will even be an annular eclipse, and it will be visible in Senegal. So it's not a frequent phenomenon.
Spain and Portugal were treated to a total solar eclipse, the first over the Iberian Peninsula in more than a century. Viewing events were held across the two countries, drawing crowds from around the world. Edis Tiansan reports from Spain.
High in the mountains of southern Catalonia, the small town of Prades has become a magnet for those chasing the shadow of the moon. Thousands have gathered for a 4-day celebration of astronomy, building towards the moment when the moon completely obscured the sun and briefly turned day into night.
It was quite moving, but I don't have the exact words to be able to describe it. It was a very beautiful and strong feeling, and I tried to use that moment to connect with myself and my heart.
At the Prades Mountains Astronomical Park, telescopes, workshops, and immersive planetarium shows have brought astronomy enthusiasts together.
We are in the middle of a line during that moment, that it's the Earth, that it's the moon, and that it's the sun. And our small position there provides us with a unique view.
And research during this year's eclipse could help reveal what happens inside us when the lights go out.
There's a pioneering experiment being carried out right now where anyone witnessing the eclipse can participate by sharing their vital health information through their smart devices. So by looking at people's collective changes in their heart rates, blood pressures or other vitals, we can perhaps understand the biological and physical effects of this unique phenomenon.
The
Spanish government estimates 450,000 tourists traveling for the total solar eclipse will contribute roughly 350 million euros to the economy. For places like Camping Prades, which has welcomed visitors to these mountains for generations, the eclipse is bringing a new kind of traveler, an unprecedented demand.
We are extremely grateful that this event has essentially put us on the map and made Prades better known, not just in Spain, but even abroad. We're completely surprised that for the first time we started receiving reservations 1 year in advance.
And Spain's moment in the shadow is only beginning, with another total eclipse in 2027 and an annular eclipse in 2028. 3 extraordinary celestial events in 3 consecutive years. It is Tianshan, CGTN in Prades, Spain.
You're watching Africa Live. Coming up in business news. Oil prices dip as investors assess prospects for weaker global demand this year. And West African lawmakers push for sanctions against the ECOWAS member states that failed to honor regional trade agreements.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Oil prices dipped on Thursday as investors assessed prospects for weaker global demand this year, though they were underpinned by a lack of major progress in talks over the blockaded Strait of Hormuz and disruptions to supply. Brent futures slipped 11 cents to $88.87 a barrel, trimming gains over the prior 6 sessions. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude fell 16 cents to $83.11 after advancing over the past 5 sessions. The market was trying to determine if potential supply constraints from the Middle East disruptions would be sufficient to offset possible moderation in global consumption. With no change in the possible reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, the key driver of the past week's higher prices, attention turned to the demand outlook after a surprise build in U.S. crude stocks and lower consumption focus from OPEC and the International Energy Agency. Uganda and Tanzania are expanding their energy partnership beyond the East African crude oil pipeline. As CGTN's Michael Baleka reports, the two countries are building a wider network to link not just oil and gas, but also electricity, storage and fuel distribution across East Africa.
The presidents of Uganda and Tanzania are writing a new chapter in their energy partnership. Yoweri Museveni and Samia Suluhu Hassan witnessed the signing of an agreement between the Uganda National Oil Company, Tanzania Petroleum Development Corporation and global energy trader Vital. The deal aims to develop Tanga into a regional energy hub, building directly on the East African crude oil pipeline infrastructure.
The project, whose foundation we're laying today, has an even broader ambition. It is designed to create value through refining, value through storage, value through logistics, value through trading, value through industrialization, value through employment, value through regional commerce. Simply put, ECOP transports molecules. The Tanga Regional Energy Hub transforms those molecules into prosperity.
The proposed hub will boost capacity for storage, refining and fuel distribution, while the partnership stretches into gas and electricity grid integration. What is emerging here is bigger than a pipeline between Uganda and Tanzania. The two countries are developing a network that could move petroleum products, gas and electricity across borders, linking production, storage and markets in the region. Uganda says feasibility and engineering studies for a refined products pipeline and storage terminal are on track for completion later this year. The nations are also fast-tracking a proposed natural gas pipeline alongside a 400 kilovolt power interconnector.
This critical transmission link of electricity from Wobulenzi, Masaka, Mutukula to Mwanza will raise power exchange capacity, strengthening the Eastern African power pool and opening pathways to the Southern Africa power pool.
This synergy aligns with Uganda's planned 60,000 barrel a day refinery in Hoima and a bidirectional multi-product pipeline designed to move refined fuel based on market demand. For both nations, the next phase focuses on converting cross-border infrastructure into a unified regional market for trade and heavy industry. Michael Baleka, CGTN, Kampala.
For decades, ECOWAS has promoted a borderless West Africa where goods and services can move freely between member states. But for many traders, the reality is very different, including delays, multiple checkpoints, different regulations and additional costs. Now, West African lawmakers are pushing for sanctions against the member states that fail to honor regional trade agreements. But can punishment finally make regional trade rules work? Kelechi Mekalam brings us the details.
For more than a decade, Nigerian palm oil trader Abdullahi Abubakar has built a business supplying customers across West Africa, including Ghana, Togo and Senegal. But getting his goods there can come at a heavy cost. Last year, a truckload bound for Lomé was held for 4 days at Seme border over paperwork. Abubakar says he lost about 800,000 naira or $600, a loss that can wipe out the profits from a small trader's journey. And when costs rise, consumers ultimately pay the price.
It eats deep into profit. A trip that should take 24 hours can take 3 to 5 days. Fuel and transportation costs go up. Then at every checkpoint, we are forced to pay 500 to 2,000 Central African francs. By the time I get to the market, my cost has more than doubled.
ECOWAS has rules to make regional trade easier, including removing customs duties on qualifying goods and cutting red tape at borders. But on the ground, multiple agencies, different requirements and repeated checks continue to slow the movement of goods.
Well, the policy says you should do it. But the practice is that you have almost 16 agencies, different agencies concerned with different regulations. Some are looking for drugs, some are looking for sanitary, and some are looking for phytosanitary issues like NAFDAC and all of that. And then you have all kinds of, and then you have immigration people on the road, you have customs. So you have so many different agencies that are looking at different things.
For perishables, that can mean spoilage. For transporters, higher costs, and ultimately consumers pay more. ECOWAS has been working on reforms, including better border management, digital trade procedures, and the removal of non-tariff barriers. But lawmakers now want stronger consequences for countries that fail to implement agreed rules.
You can apply sanctions. You remove some of the officers, other officers will come. Within days, they will descend into this same bribery and corruption and asking for money, and then deliberately delaying the movement of the goods.
ECOWAS lawmakers are now calling for sanctions against member states that fail to implement regional trade agreements. But experts say that sanctions alone cannot address the deeper problem. Countries also need to recognize common standards so that goods certified in one member state do not face repeated checks in another. ECOWAS is also pursuing measures such as joint border posts and more coordinated trade procedures. But the experience of traders suggests that enforcement cannot stop at the level of governments. The real test will be whether those rules are respected at the border, where delays, repeated checks and unofficial payments continue to add to the cost of doing business. What's more, removing these barriers can significantly increase trade within the region.
We do know that if we remove all these obstacles, our international trade will go as high as 60%.
That would mean more opportunities for businesses to sell across borders, stronger regional supply chains, and potentially lower costs for consumers. For traders like Abubakar, the measure of success is simple: a faster journey, fewer barriers, and a lower cost of doing business. Kelechi Mekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
India and the 5-member Southern African Customs Union signed terms of reference to start talks on a preferential trade agreement as New Delhi seeks lower tariffs on exports including cars, pharmaceuticals and industrial machinery. The move revives talks between India and SACU, comprising South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, Lesotho and Eswatini, after 5 rounds of negotiations between 2002 and 2010 ended without a deal. The pact could become India's first major trade agreement with an African regional bloc, giving Indian companies preferential access to a market of about 65 million people, while helping SACU members expand exports to the world's fastest growing major economy. Unlike a comprehensive free trade agreement, a preferential trade pact typically cuts duties on an agreed list of products and is less likely to cover services, investment or intellectual property. Well, let's get to sports now. We begin your sports in Morocco, and a stunning night in the 2026 Women's Africa Cup of Nations semi-finals. Malawi's remarkable debut campaign continued at the Scorchers defeated Algeria 3-1 to secure a historic place in the final on Wednesday. The Chawinga sisters were once again on the score sheet, with Tabitha notching a brace to sandwich Temwa's goal. Both sides finished with 10 women at the Olympic Stadium in Rabat. The game sparked to life midway through the first half when Algeria's Morgan Belkita was shown a red card after a VAR review. Tabitha then opened the scoring in the 33rd minute with an acrobatic finish before Temwa doubled Malawi's lead. The Scorchers were also reduced to 10 when Rose Kadzere was sent off for a dangerous tackle just before halftime. Algeria pulled one back through Ikram Ajabi on the hour mark, but Tabitha put the result to bed late as Malawi march on to play for their first continental title on Sunday. Malawi Football Association President Fleetwood Haya has claimed the Scorchers' historic WAFCON run is a result of efforts made by FIFA under President Gianni Infantino. Infantino is facing stiff opposition to his rule, notably from Europe, North America and Asian confederations over his aborted plan to sell a stake of FIFA properties, including the World Cup, to private investors. CAF, on the other hand, has thrown its weight behind Infantino, with Haya urging the under fire chief remains the best